What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. So I will be making schedule predictions for every single Power 5 team in college football for this upcoming season, and I'll also do a subsequent conference standings video once I finish every single team in a specific conference, just as a synopsis video of all my schedule predictions. And then those synopsis videos, they'll be coming later on in August as we get closer to the start of the season. We're only a few weeks away at this point, but I have a lot of the individual schedule breakdowns to get through between now and then. So let's go ahead and get into the Oklahoma State schedule predictions. So some quick thoughts on the Oklahoma State program as a whole heading into 2022. And this is one of the quietest powerhouse programs out there. I mean, they are always a 9 to 10 win team and competing for the conference, and yet they almost never really get talked about on a national scale. I expect them to be very, very good this year as they return a lot of talent, and I think we could see Spencer Sanders take the next step as a quarterback, which is much needed at this point because he was a little bit disappointing last year, but he still has a bunch of talent. He's shown some flashes. So if he can take that next step, Oklahoma State could be really dangerous. And, I think the pressure is going to be on this year, in my opinion, just as the other powerhouse teams in the conference have more to overcome than Oklahoma State does at this point, in my opinion. Oklahoma has a first-year head coach and a bunch of their players left and all of that stuff. Texas is still currently building up their roster and program under Sarkisian, and they went 5-7 last year. So it's fair to say Oklahoma State's in a better spot than them. Baylor is very good, but in a somewhat similar vein to Texas. They're still building up. They have a very, a young coaching staff there. They don't have as good of a roster as Oklahoma State either. Oklahoma State has the most experienced staff, at least at that location, and honestly probably the best, or at least arguably the best roster with loads of experience on that as well. And the schedule, while it is hard, it's not as brutal as some of the other teams in the conference have to face either. So this year seems to be sort of a make-or-break year for them, where if they don't win the Big 12 now, I'm not sure when they're going to be able to, at least as long as Oklahoma and Texas are in there. So let's go ahead and look at some teams that just don't have much of a chance to win against Oklahoma State, barring catastrophe. So they aren't worth discussing too much. And those teams are Central Michigan and UABP. PB, my bad. I don't even know who they are. That's the level of not having a shot that they are. So the first game we're going to talk about comes in Week 2. It's a home game for Oklahoma State, and it is against the Arizona State Sun Devils. Now, Arizona State is an interesting program right now. They're in just an interesting spot. They've got a lot of stuff going on, a lot of moving pieces, some off-the-field stuff in recent years that have really, sort of put a dark shadow on the program to some extent too. And Jaden Daniels is now left, and it's an interesting program. I think they're going to be decent next year. I don't think they're going to be near as good as Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State gets them at home as well. So while it's not a pushover game, it's not an easy game. It's a decently hard out-of-conference opponent. I don't think Arizona State's going to give Oklahoma State too much trouble. I think they win that one decently easily. And so then the next game up is in Week 5, and Oklahoma State gets a pretty interesting Week 4 bye week, which I'm not a huge fan of getting bye weeks that early on into the season, but it is what it is. So the Week 5 game is at Baylor, and this is definitely one of the toughest games on the schedule. Baylor is comparable to them roster-wise and staff-wise, and being on the road there, it's a tough matchup. Now, I think Oklahoma State is a better roster across the board than Baylor by a decent amount. And again, their staff has so much more continuity. They've been there for so much longer than Baylor's staff, to where if they don't get this win, it's almost a slap in the face to Gundy and his staff, because Dave Aranda has almost surpassed them at that point that quickly. I think Oklahoma State gets a win here. Like I said, I think they're a little bit better team than Baylor at this point. But Baylor's a tough team. Baylor's definitely going to be a tough out, and one of the hardest games on the schedule, really. I think Oklahoma State wins. Tough game, though. Next game up is Texas Tech at home, and this is another one that's decently tough. It's not going to be nearly as tough as Baylor, though. Texas Tech is a decent team. I think they're around probably a 6-win caliber team. So they're not as good as Oklahoma State. Also, Oklahoma State is at home. Texas Tech has a scary offense, though. They can make a little bit of a push with their offense and potentially scare you a little bit. I don't think they're going to be able to hang in there with Oklahoma State, though. I've got Oklahoma State winning that one decently easily. Next game up is one that I kind of went back and forth on, and it's at TCU. Now, Oklahoma State is definitely better than TCU, but it kind of comes right in the middle of a tough stretch here. It's right before the Texas game. and it's a team that they could potentially overlook on the road. That's good enough to scare them and get a win here. I don't think TCU is actually going to be able to pull it off, though. I'm going to go with Oklahoma State in this game. It's a close game. It's definitely a tough game. It's not one to just ignore and take for granted. But I just don't think TCU's going to be able to get it done. I don't think they're good enough of a roster. I don't trust their coaching staff all the way yet either. So I'm going to go with Oklahoma State in that one. And the next game up is one of the other hardest games on the schedule, in my opinion, and that is Texas at home. Now, Texas at home is an interesting situation here because it's definitely not a game they're going to overlook by any means, but it is an interesting one. Texas has the top-end talent to be one of the best teams in the country with guys like Bijan Robinson and Xavier Worthy, Quinn Ewers, etc., but their overall roster construction isn't quite as strong. Now, they have a lot of momentum going right now with some off-the-field, some recruiting and stuff like that going their way. And I think they're going to be a very dangerous team, a very good team next year. This is going to be one that is going to be a very tough one to win. Even though Oklahoma State's at home, I think Texas kind of surprises people a little bit. I think they come out and they circle this one as a Super Bowl sort of scenario, and they come out and play really strong. I think Texas gets what I would consider to be an upset. It's not a huge upset. The teams are comparable, but I think Texas will shock them here and get a win. I think Oklahoma State will probably, there's enough games where there's not really a 50-50, but maybe like a 60-40, 70-30 kind of thing, that they're going to drop one of them. I think this is probably the one where it comes. I do think Texas's offense is got enough firepower to keep them in most any game, even when they are a little bit outmatched. So I'm going to go with Texas to get a surprise win here. The next week, they are at Kansas State, and this is one that is not an easy game by any means. Kansas State can give anybody trouble, and they're not a team to be overlooked. They're very well coached. They're very disciplined. But I don't think they have the horses, really, to run with Oklahoma State. I don't think they have the offense to put up enough points on them. And I don't think they're going to be able to win this game, really. I think Oklahoma State probably wins this by 2 scores or more. It's not one that Kansas State doesn't have a chance in, but I just don't think they have enough of that high-end, elite-level talent to get it done. The next game up is at Kansas, and this one is probably one I could put into the not worth discussing one, just because Kansas is not very good, and getting them on the road is tougher than at home, obviously. But there's not much of a home field advantage there. Kansas is probably going to hover around 2 to 3 wins this year. I don't see them having much of a shot in this one. Going to go with Oklahoma State to win big there. Next game up is Iowa State, and they get Iowa State at home. But Iowa State can be scary. Iowa State is a tough out for sure. Now, I think what's going to hurt Iowa State is a lack of experience here. They lose Brock Purdy. They lose Breece Hall. So it's going to be tough for them to go on the road against Oklahoma State and get a big upset and win there against a team that is better than them. I'm going to go with Oklahoma State to win for that reason. I don't think Iowa State is good enough, and I don't think they have a difference maker at quarterback or anything that can really propel them to a win here. So I'm going to go to Oklahoma State to win this game as well. Next game up is arguably the toughest game on the entire schedule, and it is at Oklahoma. And this is the one where really I feel like Oklahoma State has to get over the hump this year. Oklahoma has been just a little bit ahead of them for a good while now, despite how competitive those two have been. And this is one where I know Oklahoma State has done well in recent years, but they haven't won the conference in a little while, and I think this is a game where if you want to be able to win the conference, this is when you're going to have to win. And Oklahoma's in year 1 under Brent Venables. They've got a lot of moving pieces right now. They're going to be a very good team still, but this is the year where they're going to kind of be down a little bit. If a 9 to 10 win kind of team is considered to be down, but for Oklahoma standards, this is kind of going to be the year to get them if you're going to get them. So I think Oklahoma State is going to be in Super Bowl mode here. They know this is kind of the season almost. If it comes to do you want to win the conference or not, you're going to have to get this one. So I think Oklahoma State comes out. I think they're the better team here. I think they're the more experienced team here. I think their staff is much more experienced, and I think they can make a difference in a big game like this in particular. So I think they go on the road there and upset Oklahoma. And again, I say upset loosely. It's not really an upset. It's two very evenly matched teams. But I think they go on the road there and get a huge road win against Oklahoma, a game that I expect to be absolutely crazy. Should be very, very, very tightly contested. Should be a very competitive game to watch. But I'm going to go with Oklahoma State to win that one. And then they wrap up the year at home against West Virginia, and this is one to keep an eye on. West Virginia, a team probably around that Texas Tech level, in my opinion. They have a pretty good offense. They've got JT Daniels at quarterback. I think he's going to be a pretty good quarterback for them. But they're not as good as Oklahoma State by any means. However, there could be a little bit of a letdown mode here after the Oklahoma game, win or loss, and last game of the year. If there's a look-ahead scenario to the Big 12 championship, if they know they're going to be in it, things like that could cause you to have some external factors cause a slip-up here. I think they're going to be fine. Like I said, with Gundy, he's such an experienced head coach at this point. There is no reason that they shouldn't be rolling on all cylinders for this one. I think they finish out strong with a win against West Virginia. They are just the better team there. So that makes Oklahoma State 11-1 on the season, which is absolutely outstanding. It's definitely good enough to get to the Big 12 title game. Hopefully they can win it this time. Now, they could definitely lose on the road to OU or on the road at Baylor, not to mention some tough home games against guys like West Virginia and some TCU, Texas Tech, Iowa State, Kansas State. All of those games are technically losable, but they should be favored in most all of them, if not actually all of them. And if they do what they're supposed to do, then they're going to be just fine. Oklahoma has a year one head coach and a lot of uncertainty. Baylor is a threat, but they don't have the same roster or experience that Oklahoma State does, and really neither does the rest of the Big 12. Even the Texas loss that I gave them, they should win that game. They're the better team in my opinion. But I don't see them going 12-0 by any means. I think 10-2 or 11-1 is likely where you're going to see them fall. And, there's no reason this team shouldn't win the conference this year. If they do what they're supposed to do, and, they should be fine. They've got arguably the best roster. They have probably the most experienced staff combined with one of the best rosters. If they don't get it done now, I don't know when or if they will. Mike Gundy has built one of the best and most consistent programs, and I think this is the year that they have to take that next step and win the conference. Anyway, though, that'll do it for this one. Let me know down below where you guys agree and or disagree with me on the Oklahoma State schedule in 2022. Tell me what record you think they're going to have next year and who, if anybody, they're going to lose to. Also, if you've made it this far in the video, be sure to go ahead and leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more college football content in the future. Like I said, I'm going to be uploading one of these for every single Power 5 team. I have finished the ACC. I've finished the SEC. I'm almost done with the Big 12 now. After that, we're moving on to the Pac-12 and the Big 10. Going to keep it on rolling. So, thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you guys next time.